Hello and thank you for coming to the McWaters Effect. I'm your host, Matt. Today we're going to be talking about the war in Syria. And first thing I want to go over, like I always do, is the history of the war in Syria. On August 21st, 2013, is when the Syrian civil war started, when the people of the country rose against a tyrannical government. Now on September 2013 is when Assad supposedly used chemical weapons against his own people to try to stop the insurrection against the government. And due to the call from the media, other countries, and warmongering politicians, Obama on August 31st, 2013, he went to the U.S. Congress asking for to have military force into Syria in response to Assad using chemical weapons. But notes to Obama, the media, and warmongering politicians that some of the people that were in part of the insurrection was part of ISIS and got a hold of the chemical weapons and used them against people in order to frame Assad's government so the U.S. and other countries would attack them in order to dethrone Assad and create a power vacuum so they could take over. But due to cooler heads prevailing, the U.S. Congress didn't give permission to go into Syria. Thus, we never went into Syria at that time. Later on, we went in because a caliphate formed. Half of Syria and half of Iraq joined together and was called the ISIS state. Now, Bashar al-Assad was kept in power on the northern part of Syria because of Russia's interference in keeping them afloat. And we kept the Iraqi government on the western side of Iraq in power with our interference. And in the next 3 years, there was a war in Syria and Iraq to take out ISIS by the United States and Russia with the help of also troops from Iraq and troops from Syria. This was declared as part of the war on terrorism. And some people wonder how history would judge Obama's actions in Syria. Well, in my opinion, most of the stuff wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the previous administration going into Iraq in the first place. Now, him attacking Syria before getting all the facts of what was, and when I say attack, I'm not talking about bombs and stuff, but attacking them with words first and help destabilizing the government didn't help matters. It didn't help matters, and not only that, he didn't have all the facts of what happened there. He's going on emotion and going on with what the media wanted him to do. The media instigated this situation instead of doing investigative reporting and seeing what actually happened in that country at that time. And the short and long of it, the media manipulated Obama into doing what he did and destabilized the Middle East even more than it already was. Now, after Obama left office and Donald Trump got in there, things seemed to quiet down until about 2018, and he started doing drone strikes in Syria, going after military targets that was left over of ISIS. In my opinion, Donald Trump decided to do this from bad intelligence coming from the intelligence community, and also because John Bolton, who he asked to join part of his administration, convinced him to do so. And John Bolton is known for being a warmonger that actually was from the George Bush administration. He should never have hired John Bolton. And when he fired Joe Bolton, that was the best thing he could ever done. He didn't do it, though, until about 6 months later, because he realized he was going against the will of his base. Now we have a tweet coming from Joe Biden, what he thinks of all the situation. Let's be clear. Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to take the U.S. into war with Iran without congressional approval. A president should never take a nation into war without an informed consent of the American people. I completely agree, but that tweet right there is pretty prophetic, and I'll explain why when we go into Joe Biden's administration about the war. First, I'd like to give some context of what happened. On February 15th, there was an attack on U.S. troops at the Ibrahim International Airport in northern Iraq. On February 25th, that's when Biden decided to attack groups that supposedly was involved in the situation and attack them in Syria. Now the U.S. troops have a stronghold in Syria, and the question is, how long will he keep them there? Well, I got a clip that's from Tucker Carlson to enlighten you in the situation.
It wasn't made to you in the first place or to the country. It was made to defense contractors and neocon think tanks in Washington. Joe Biden promised them that once he took power, the United States would immediately bring war back to the Middle East after a 4-year respite that really agitated people in D.C. And when he did that, Biden said he wouldn't consult Congress or even the Senate parliamentarian before he did it. He wouldn't even pretend to, quote, work within the system. He'd just do it. And he wasn't kidding. On Thursday, he did it. Biden sent F-15s to kill people in Syria. Now, no one in this country benefited from that, not even in the smallest, most theoretical way. And that in itself was deeply reassuring to the political class in Washington. They consider any attempt to improve this country a terrifying form of nationalism. Ooh, it scares them. But the idea of killing people in a faraway place, thrilling.
I do think it was important for the Biden administration to send a message, a very clear message early on, that these attacks on our forces will not be tolerated.
We're going to take a proportionate response, that we're going to respond. And we hit back at them. And I think it's just sort of resetting expectations that if you hit at us, we're going to punch back.
No one likes to talk about the fact that we have to protect ourselves, but that's the national security reality. And I think the Biden administration understands it and they're acting accordingly.
I think that that President Biden is pursuing a tough but smart approach.
Is it a mistake to target bases in Syria right now?
Actually, it was pretty smart. This is counterterrorism. So I don't think the Biden administration needed new permission or authorization from the Congress.
Yeah, didn't need permission. Listen carefully, America. Killing strangers in Syria was not pointless. You don't know where Syria is. But it was, quote, pretty smart to do that. That's the official word. It comes from experts who believe that Saddam had bioweapons and started a war on the basis of it. Doesn't matter. Thursday's strike against Syria, they just told us, was counterterrorism. And counterterrorism justifies all. Keep that in mind going forward. You don't want counterterrorism aimed at you. Let's hope it never is. In Syria, counterterrorism means that at least 22 people died, according to local reports. Pentagon says only one person died. But who were these people in any case?
Now, this kind of goes with what I've been saying throughout this video. This is a neocon issue in Democrat Party and the Republican Party. They want to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria to go after oil, natural gas. Is this fight over a gas pipeline fueling the world's bloodiest conflict? Good question. Let's take a look at this evidence here. Now, I don't know if I'd call this evidence like an evidence in a court of law, but it's definitely damn good circumstantial evidence that why the U.S. wants to be in Syria. As you can see, there's a pipeline there. They want to go from Saudi Arabia through Jordan into Syria, up through Turkey, into Bulgaria. Now, this actually explains why Turkey has been on the border of Syria and Iraq, rounding up the Kurds. This also explains why we have made a strong foothold in Syria, pretty close to where the pipeline is. This also explains why Russia doesn't want this pipeline to happen, because this pipeline is going to take natural gas, all the way from Saudi Arabia to Europe. And Europe is right now, when it comes to natural gas, is on the tit of Russia. That's where a lot of Russia's income comes from, is from Europe buying natural gas. This would be in conflict with that. Now, the reason Iran doesn't want to be involved, the reason Iran doesn't want this pipeline to be built is obvious. First thing, them and the Saudis do not get along. And number two, they have their own pipeline they want to build, going from Iran into Iraq, into Syria, into Greece. Now, Russia don't like this pipeline either, but Iran has actually made a deal with Russia. If they are allowed to build that pipeline, that they would not charge any lower than what Russia charged for the natural gas. So thus, the expense for Europeans would not go down. Now, as you can see, this conflict, what it's all about right now, is about getting this pipeline to go into Europe to help our allies to lower their gas prices and to get off the tit of the Russians' natural gas. To hurt Russia, pretty much, is the reason they want to do this. This is the reason I believe Trump didn't want to get involved in it, because he could see that this is a conflict. If Europe really wants this to happen, they need to do it themselves. This is why we need to stop being the world's police. We need to stop getting involved in these regime changes and foreign wars. It's because we're doing it to help our friends, and we're not thinking about the people on the ground and in the countries that might be hurting and the people that might be hurting. Now, what I find interesting about this whole thing is that this man, Joe Biden, decides he's going to drop bombs in Syria in order to help to build a pipeline to help Europe's natural gas to go down. But in his own country, he decides to shut down the Keystone Pipeline. How much sense does that make? He's going to try to help everybody else in the world, but hurts 11,000 workers in his own country and try to make people that believe in climate change happy. But yet, he's going to help Saudi Arabia get a pipeline from Saudi Arabia all the way to Europe so they can create more pollution. Not only that, to make the pipeline, they're going to have to create more pollution. And the reason they want to shut down the pipeline is because they're creating too much pollution making the pipeline. How much sense does that fucking make? Well, guys, I hope I gave y'all something to think about, and I hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, I don't know what to tell you. Please hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Peace.